Welcome back to The Living Process. My name is Greg Madison, and this episode I'm talking with Larry Berger. Larry was very actively involved in correspondence with Gene Gendlin, and we talk a little bit about that in this episode. His larger interest is in attention and the importance of attention, and he has years of studying and teaching as a professor of economics and philosophy, and is also quite active in the embodied critical thinking group, as well as a number of different groups that are trying to bring into the world the importance of attention and combining attention with activism. And that sounded really interesting, and we spend actually most of our time talking about that possibility and kind of what's difficult about it, as well as the potential of it, and this network that is forming around the world. And I'll put some links underneath the notes of the episode so that people can get in touch with those different developments if you're wanting to. Welcome back to The Living Process, and this time our guest, Larry Berger. Welcome, Larry.
Pleasure to be here, Greg.
Thank you. As you might know, I don't know, I often start just by asking people how they found out about focusing or about Gene Gendlin or his philosophy. I'm curious how you got into this general world.
Yes, well, in my 20s, I practiced a lot of mindfulness. I was a member of the G Foundation, which I don't know if you've heard of that before.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the end of that time, I came to the conclusion that attention was the essence of spiritual practice. You know, I had been involved a little bit in Zen Buddhism and yoga and things too.
Okay.
So that was the conclusion I came to. And I started to write about it at some point because I also became interested in economics at the same time, and I saw a connection between attention and economics because they're both a resource. They're a resource. I mean, attention is a resource. That's the idea. So I started writing in 1982, I guess it was, and then I was living in New York, and I went to a friend of mine's bookstore, and he said, "Larry, there's this book, Focusing, here. You know, I think that might fit with it," because he knew what I was doing. And I thought, So I read it, and I just was astonished, really, in how it comported with my experiences, my meditative experiences, especially when Gene says, you know, something's happened here that never has happened before, or something along those lines, he says. And that's exactly how I felt in my experiences. So, and I started practicing focusing, and it was just wonderful for me. I mean, it really, I just on my own, I just started practicing, and I would say the words in my chest, and it would really help me through some difficult times. So then, and eventually I was at the University of Iowa, and somebody told me there was a focusing therapist around. So I started to work with a woman. I think her name was Susan. I can't remember exactly her name. I knew that she trained with Gene, so I did a couple of years of that. And then I ended up just writing to him for, I don't know, this was probably in the late 80s. Okay. And I sent him a letter, and 6 months later, he said, "Sorry for being so late in responding, but I just came up for air after a big project." Now, I don't know what that project was. I don't know if that's when he wrote the process model or some other.
I'm curious, was that on your original topic of attention and economics?
Oh, yeah. Well, yes, it was. I saw the connection with his work, and so I wrote him and just said, and how much it's helped me. I told him how indebted I am to what he's established.
I'm curious about your your correspondence and your discussions. Is that something you'd like to talk about?
Absolutely, yeah. Because like I said, especially this first one.
Mm-hmm.
So here he's telling me now. Okay, now this is August 9th, 1991. He says, "I enjoyed your paper. My point is very good." I talk about a billiard player who doesn't understand the laws of physics. Okay, but yet he has complete command of the billiards, and it seems like he acts as if he knows the laws of physics. But and that's a sort of idea that mainstream economics have been throwing around, is people don't have to, even they assume people know the laws of economics, even though they don't actually, but they assume as if. So that's a big was a big theme in economics. So he says, "I enjoyed the paper." He says, "My point is very good about the billiard player, and the whole set being something very different than the physics model, which he doesn't understand." And he says, "It seems to me you've put it in a way that readers might grasp. They don't grasp my version. See section," in other words, in the meantime, he had sent me this, which is Thinking Beyond Patterns.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
He had sent, and later he sent me the process model and a bunch of books just like this about a box full. So he says, they didn't get it. My claim that the bird flees from the cat, not from a pattern, even when in fact the scientist puts up only a pattern and the bird flees. Now, when I hear that I go immediately to Heidegger. I'm a Heidegger scholar,
Mm-hmm.
and that's exactly a point I'm making. I'm working on a paper now. I have 2 weeks left for submission, and I'm talking about Heidegger's presence or being, in which that enables us to go beyond uh, uh, any kind of explanation or any kind of model of the behavior. Okay, because by way of my presence, my attention, I take in the whole person. I can relate to the whole person. I don't need a model. I don't need a representation
Mm-hmm.
of that person. So he says that's a very new thing, and you're the only one I found doing it. But the specific claim that the pattern, which seems to explain, is not actually that which functions in what it explains. What a point that is. So these people think that economics is really what's functioning, and we can assume it is, and therefore it doesn't explain it without more. And the more is what we're adding. So let me. He says he'd like to bat this back and forth for a while, write me some reactions to my thing I'm sending, and that I think is the process model, in which I had no idea. I was not a trained philosopher at the time. I had a business school PhD. So and he talks about the importance of economics in the social sciences. Models from economics are used throughout the social sciences. So he's saying this is really an important area. So next, September 15th, 1991. So I wrote him a response to this Thinking Beyond Patterns, and so he's talking about the fact I noticed that interpersonal interaction didn't seem to be there. So he's explaining why it really is there, because we are interactions. And then on attention, I'd have a big response. I wrote a thing years ago that never got out about Marx and moving from wealth as agriculture, and now we have to move on from that, from wealth as industrial products, from that to interpersonal attention as the next form of wealth. That was the paper he wrote. And to go on.
Let me just say that back, that interpersonal attention as the next form of wealth.
Right.
Wow.
And you hear about today, there's the attention economy.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you that tomorrow night, I'm going to the book launch of a group called Friends of Attention, which is getting so much press, it's unbelievable. They've had 4 articles in the New York Times already, 2 of which they've written, and they are all over the place. So the whole idea of attention and what they call the fracking of attention, meaning that it's it's a commodity that's being chewed up by corporations. Well, he says in a society where machines do most of the industrial and farm work, it will be attention, it will be the wealth that shapes society, as Marx showed that the production of wealth does. In a society we'd like, attention for us as a unique in-here beings would be how we'd want to live and arrange the day's activities. And before that, he said, better institutions would be ones that I know that I am in here, in my body, and I'm not just a product of these institutions, not just grist for their stamping. I mean, this is exactly what he's talking about, this movement today, about the fracking of attention and how it's been commodified. It's a big thing over in the United States. I don't know where else it is. So he basically predicted this, what's happening now.
I'm just kind of taking that in, the importance of attention, and it sounds almost like, you didn't say it this way, but almost like not allowing your attention to somehow be colonized and taken from you, and also to kind of safeguard your participation in organizations so that the organization also doesn't somehow use you in a way that makes you less than what you really are.
That's exactly right. And of course, focusing is one way to do it. To have the ability to place your attention inside and get more in touch with who you are.
Yeah.
And to grow. All these, that's the counter to all that. And I'm trying to get this group called Friends of Attention, I'm trying to get them to understand that this approach of focusing is very important for their project. They're more interested in changing laws, doing lobbying and things like that. And they do attention exercises, but I taught a course for them. They also have an attention school, and I taught a course there, and I actually had a very strong professional in there with doing the course with me for 3 weeks. And at the end, he did focusing with these students, and the students loved it. I mean, they loved the whole course because it was all about doing attention exercises and how that fit with phenomenology. The course was called Introduction to Phenomenology. So I got it in there, and I keep working to try to make them aware of focusing and how that they should employ it as part of what they're doing. For exactly the reason you laid out there.
So it sounds like this is one of your main passions at the moment.
That's right. Yeah. Well, my passion has been attention I started writing about it in 1982, but I'm finally starting to make progress. And Gene says, gee, people don't understand my stuff. I hope that you can do better. That's what he said in one of his letters. And I'm still working at it, Gene. It's hard.
Can you say, what is it about the topic of attention that is so important to you?
Well, I believe I can experience directly attention right now. And it's the center of my experience. It's me. I mean, and Gene explicitly says attention is me. He writes it in one of these letters, and he actually had it in an article that he had sent to me earlier, in which I went back and forth with him on it, called New Phenomenology of Carrying Forward, which is in the volume that Donato Scholler and put together. So in that, and in one of the final drafts, he had attention as me, and he talks, but that was cut by the editor, I think, at the end. It was too much, or something like that. But I have it in the letter. So I feel that there's a deep relation between attention and the self, and that has been what my goal has been, is to make the simple claim that attention is human presence, my presence in the world. And that is exactly Heidegger, and Heidegger has a lot behind that. Heidegger talks about being in the world, but then he says that attention and being are virtually the same thing, except attention is how we experience this thing called being, which is just the whole process of the world being made manifest, showing up, presence. So
is there a distinction? I'm just wanting to really get how you're using the term. As you talk about it, I intuitively am following what you're saying, but I want to just see if I'm getting it the way you intended. When you say attention, do you mean the same as kind of bringing awareness to oneself, bringing consciousness, sort of somehow being conscious of your bodily being? Is that the same?
well, here's the theme of the claim I'm making.
Yeah.
Because one way I said it earlier, and Gene liked, was the attention is the center of gravity of the lived body. But now the way I'm expressing it, attention is placed in the lived body environment. That's this article that I have to get in 2 weeks, that's the central claim. It's placed. And it can be intentionally placed. Now, the lived body environment, of course, is a very big idea for a gene.
I'm still wanting to just stay with that term attention.
Yeah.
Because when you talk about it, it sounds as though it's the same as bringing your awareness to your body.
That's right. That's placing attention in your body. So, because the lived body is part of this continuum.
Yeah.
The lived body environment is basically anything we can access.
Yeah.
Right. It's right now. I'm paying attention to you, so my attention is placed on the screen, and I'm seeing you now. And the idea here is that attention. People talk. In the mainstream. Your attention is focused on that, on the screen and the person. But what's happening is the brain is just taking in all the stimuli and turning it into a representation of what that is, and that's what you're actually experiencing. So I'm not actually experiencing the screen and you, right? My attention is not out there literally. No, they say that I'm living with mental. The brain is where attention happens.
Yeah.
And what I'm actually experiencing is just a representation of the reality. And this enactivist school argues against that. Husserl, who's an important phenomenologist, he dismissed it with one short paragraph.
So, no, but when I'm listening to you, I'm thinking that you're making a distinction between the cognitive perspective, cognitive science, humans as information processing versus the human as an actual being in the world, already out there, resonating with the environment, that it's not just a cognitive process. There is actually an interaction with another person.
Exactly. Other people and things.
Yeah.
And the point is attention is the center of that interaction.
Yeah. I'm curious what the practical implications of this way of thinking are.
Well, when we realize that attention is in the world, so to speak, we can wake up to that process. Okay. And how that plays out is we're unaware of being in our bodies and of the movement of our attention from moment to moment. And that's because that's how it is centered. That's how the self comes into presence. That's my big theme, is the relation between me and my attention. So that's how I come into presence. And the way it is, the way I describe it is, we have all these, I call them bodily resources, which is genes implicit. And in any situation, various aspects of myself come to the fore and are engaged in meeting entities that are showing up for me. So it's all For Heidegger, everything is manifestation, everything is presencing. There are no sort of standalone entities. Everything is in relation to each other. So, so the practicality is we can become aware of this process just by noticing our attention. And I tell people you can put attention in your hand. Now, is this a represent? So I feel the sense of my hand, and Husserl does this. So I cite Husserl as putting attention in his hand and saying, I can feel the sensations inside, but then I can also, if my hand is on the desk, I can feel, I move, I shift my attention slightly, and I can actually feel, I go away from the actual sensations in my hand, and I can feel the table without anything else moving. So he's talking about that he's aware of the movement of attention, which we almost never are. Now, we think we're in control of our attention, but we only are aware of the content, and that's where the language comes in. So we live in these processes, and we're unaware. We're unaware of them. We don't come up with a direct referent, as Gene talks about. Okay, so this is the point. The practicality is that we can engage in disciplines like mindfulness or focusing that enable us to be more present in the world and be aware of this action taking place inside. And that's one thing I argue, is that once you start to intentionally place your attention, that's how I define mindfulness. I can intentionally place my attention in my hand, in my chest. I can speak there. Mm-hmm. If I do this intentionally, I become aware of a whole new world. Mm-hmm. And I become aware of myself, and I can see the action of my body.
The distinction I'm wanting to make, which is maybe a subtle one, if it's valid at all, is that I can bring my attention into my chest, for example. I can stay with a felt sense there. I can follow it. I can allow it to unfold. But I can also bring attention around my body so that my body feels like it's within a field of attention rather than attention inside of my body only.
Oh, yeah.
It's also around my body, that my body isn't the container of attention. It doesn't cut me off from the environment in some way.
Yeah, but you're right, and I'm working specifically on opening up a space around my body. That's part of my meditative practice.
Yeah,
but it's more than that. We don't have to make that sort of effort. Like right now, if I'm looking at a picture of my childhood family, and my attention is there. Well, now it depends to the extent. If I'm still within all my bodily processes, mm-hmm. I may just glance at that thing, but still I have to have some contact, and that's my attention going out to that picture. So that show, the idea is we're more than the skin. That's mm-hmm. this the way it's argued in the enactivism literature, mm-hmm. that our minds, or they talk about the extended mind there, that we're not in this isolated mental realm or bodily realm. That just when I look at a tree, just for that second at least, my attention is out there, and I am out there. Mm-hmm. Now, it depends on the extent to which I sustain that I can actually feel. If I really just put my attention on a tree, and I talk about this quote of Martin Buber. Do you know that quote of Martin Buber where he's in front of the tree? So wonderful. And I can enter into relation with the tree itself that stands in front of me bodily. That's my attention. Mm-hmm. That enables me to do that. Ordinarily, it's just I have all these standard ways of thinking about things, and I know certain things about the tree, and that prevents me from really encountering the tree in itself.
So let me ask: do you actually have a tree outside your window?
I do. I'm looking at trees right now.
Okay, good. So let me ask
snow
you.
All over them.
Okay.
Beautiful day, beautiful.
Sounds beautiful. Let me ask you about that. Of course, one way of encountering that tree is visually as an object out there. Another way of encountering that tree is to use the tree as a stimulus and notice the response you have inside of yourself. A third way of encountering that tree is to notice, in some sense, while looking at the tree, to notice the tree itself while paying attention to you in the world in relation to the tree, which includes your whole bodily responses, but isn't quite as contained as just using the tree as a stimulus. It somehow is much more relational. Does that
Yeah,
make
those
sense?
are all possibilities. Yeah, they're very, very interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
all world of possibilities and where you can place your attention. All depends. That's the lever we have.
Yeah.
And when you talk about agency,
Mm-hmm.
that is what I'm arguing again in this paper is that that's the kind of thing we need to really be to have agency, any kind of agency over ourselves,
Yeah.
in the world. It's by way of that underlying process.
Can I just,
Because I argue otherwise that attention is always passive.
yes,
It's always being
exactly.
driven by our bodily reactions and we're unaware of them.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is a big theme for Heidegger too, our passivity. And the only way we can be somewhat active is to do the things you're describing, is to take control of our own attention in that manner.
So that was something you said a little while ago, made me think of that as well, that when you were talking about attention and kind of being more in control of it, not being passive, because if you're just passive, then you're under control or being controlled potentially, which I suspect is something that you're concerned about in this day and age with the way, screens try to suck us in and algorithms try to capture our attention. And if you're passive, you find yourself completely lost in the technology, for example.
That's literal.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
are literally, when you think of this idea that attention is how we are in the world, that's
Yeah.
our spirit or whatever you want to call that, is literally entrapped in there.
Mm-hmm.
You're absorbed. That's the word that's used in phenomenology.
Yeah.
They call that the natural attitude, that we're
Yes.
absorbed
Yeah.
in the things of the world,
Yeah.
and we're not aware of the underlying process.
So
Can
I just ask about that? Because I think what you're advocating, which I completely agree with, is a more active awareness of your attention, where you put it, how you put it, the impact of your being, and having much more of a say over that. But if that's true, I'm thinking it's almost like you need to add something to focusing, because focusing gives you the awareness to be able to do that. But focusing doesn't necessarily give you, unless you build it in, the kind of the assertiveness to stand up for it.
Well, I guess there are various definitions of focusing around,
Mm-hmm.
and there's the relational focusing too, where although often it is done in dyads,
Mm-hmm.
but I just have a broader view. I know I talk to people who are very experienced in focusing and say, well, focusing has its limitations, but I see it as very closely related to mindfulness.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I've been doing some work with Serge Prangle. You know him,
Yeah.
and he's giving courses on the relation between mindfulness and focusing, and it's not that different.
Mm-hmm.
It really isn't that different. And I'm actually in a mindfulness group. We every week, a very small group of people who just meditate. But even there, we bring up themes. We go into it with themes, and that it can lead to sensing the body in order to pursue those themes, and to seeing how things resonate inside. So I'm not so sure that I think mindfulness focusing is a superior form of mindfulness. That's what I put forward myself.
Okay.
The idea is, I can put my attention here, but I can also, you just described it. That's all focusing for my mind, because I'm being aware of how my body reacts. Well, that's what it's about. It's the resonance of the body, and recognizing the incredible intelligence and how it is expressed by way of resonance. So what more is there to
Yeah.
mindfulness? Because I think mindfulness is the practice of attention, intentionally being here now, and so that's why, that's how I try to promote my focusing, is by pointing this out there. And this has been a limitation of Buddhist thought. Now, I'm working with some Buddhist people who say, yeah, well, we're aware of the emotional dimension. But otherwise, there are the people who say that Buddhism doesn't really recognize the emotional side of things, the self-awareness. And so that's an improvement over some Buddhist types of mindfulness, that we are able to tap into the deepest parts of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's remarkable what we can dredge up.
Yeah. The thing that I wanted to suggest, but maybe I'll do it in a slightly different way. I'm thinking, from your interest in attention, I'm thinking that there could potentially be almost political implications of that there's something quite empowering about what you're emphasizing.
I wrote a book about it.
Okay, can you tell me a bit about that?
Well, the book is called The Politics of Attention and the Promise of Mindfulness.
Okay.
And so I go through and show the importance of attention in various ways. And then when I get to the politics part, I look at Hannah Arendt's work. And she has this idea of citizen councils as being the natural form of governance. And she shows in the wonderful book On Revolution, which everybody should go out and rush out and read. It talks about the Russian, the French, and the American revolutions, and talks about how the American Revolution really set up a wonderful way to establish a government. But she shows that when governments dissolve, when constitutions dissolve, it's always a natural process that these citizen councils arise. And that's what we need today. We need citizenry involved in the actual process of government, so they can't go and do these things without us knowing about it and us being full-fledged participants. But then as I went through her work, I said, she's assuming something here, and that is that people are open and receptive to the ideas within these citizen councils. People are paying good attention to others, because we know these things can fall apart into squabbles, and they need mindfulness.
Yeah.
So I came up with the idea of mindful citizen councils as what's needed as a pure form of governance. So that's really where I sort of ended up. And that ended up me going out and starting to do community development work, where people were doing this kind of thing. They call it relational presencing in these groups. And there's so much going on around the world along these lines. So, and that eventually led to me being part of a beloved community circle, by Thich Nhat Hanh's idea, and other work where and I have focuses in there, and the people love it when we do focusing.
It reminds me, certainly, some years ago, I got involved in activism, I think for a very similar reason, wanting to bring kind of the depth of awareness to political action. So it's not either one or the other, that they are both coming together. And I think there's people in the therapy world that continue to work on that sort of integration of more of a kind of psychological or personal sophistication in some way, and also organizing and relating and working with others. It seems to be so difficult to sort of bring those things together and have it kind of become enough of a movement that it begins to influence a culture. I'm wondering if you have ideas about how that develops.
Well, I'll tell you, you really hit the nail on the head there, because it so happens, I have this beloved community circle group, small group.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out I'm also a member of a group called Deep Transformation Network. It has 5,000 members. It's led by Jeremy Lin, okay, who always has people from around the world coming in, working on exactly these lines. And now he's starting a new initiative to network. And like I said, there's so much activity going on along these lines, and people keep saying it's not connected. If it was somehow, we have so many people working, but we don't know what they're doing. We can't coordinate activities. There's so much. So Jeremy's idea is to create a network for everything around the world to try to change the civilization.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's unbelievably ambitious.
Mm-hmm.
But given the world crisis we're in, that's what's called for. So he's been working on it for 2 years. He has like 15 partner organizations that he started with. And so our function, my group's function, because we have so many community development experts, is for anybody who wants to join this coalition, and it should start up by mid-year. Anybody who wants to join the coalition, they come to us and we help them build communities that are appropriate, that have the mix of mindfulness practice, focusing, listening. I was speaking to Jeremy, who leads us, and I said, Jeremy, this is incredibly ambitious. And he said, we're desperate. I mean, he realizes it's. I could send you the flyer for it, but it really does have the ambition. It's a long-term project. It's saying, we want to look forward to, and he's just published his third book that talks about what the civilization could look like. So it does have this long-term view, which you need. You really need to have a goal. Where can we be? What kind of world can this be other than the crisis we have now?
Mm-hmm.
You have to have that idea in mind, but also there's short-term things we can do, medium-term things we can do, all as part of this coalition. So it is incredibly ambitious.
I'm curious. When I listen to you, I'm curious, sort of, what does it actually look like? What sort of processes or kind of ways of relating have developed so that people don't lose their kind of attention, using your word, while sort of listening to others or interacting with others? Because it's so easy to sort of, to lose yourself, as you were saying earlier.
Let me tell you what we do in the Beloved Community Circle, which is, it's the idea of Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King and Thich Nhat Hanh worked together. He actually commended Thich Nhat Hanh for the Nobel Peace Prize. So when Martin Luther King died, Thich Nhat Hanh took up this Beloved Community Circle idea, and it combines three things: the practice of mindfulness, but also developing loving and caring relations with the members of the group. Now, the groups are small, of between 5 and 12 people.
Okay.
And the third thing is you do some kind of activism together. Okay, but so the three of those fit so beautifully because, first of all, you start off by practicing mindfulness. So you'll sit maybe for 10 minutes. We have our sessions are an hour and a half. So we start off getting into our bodies. And sometimes we have focusers lead. Sometimes lead our beginning attunement, and then we'll go into these breakout groups too, where we're told to stay in the body. And when you look at the other people, that we know that everyone is trying to stay in the body. So we'll have various breakout groups and other activities over the next hour and a half. So we don't want to abstract questions about what to do about this or that. No, it's got to be something relevant for me, so I can call on my bodily sense of things to go deeper into the question. So that's how I try. But you're right, it's hard. I mean, listening is hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's because we have these habitual processes that just always arise and take our attention.
And were you saying that in these groups, the third sort of aspect of them is that you go out into the world and do something, some kind of activism?
So, and people all around the world are doing various things. They're largely local. I'm one of 2 online groups, but all these others are all local. So they get involved in various projects, environmental typically, but other other kinds of projects, just helping out the poor and other things.
Well, that's, as you describe that, I'm struck that the third thing, which doesn't always happen, seems really important, the working together out in the world. That there's something about that process of, especially the combination of mindfulness or kind of being aware of yourself, aware of the people you're with, and working together in a shared project. There's something about the working together part of it that seems really pivotal to me.
Absolutely. All three are absolutely essential. And the other thing, too, is you just get to talk to them, share your woes,
Mm-hmm.
you tell them what is going on in your life. So that's another aspect, to just pour your heart out to each other. It's just to have that, that bond. What a bond that is, that people will listen to me. You know how rare that is.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing I was saying before about focusing and how it sounded like something else was needed, what I was really pointing to was Gene's complaint that he sometimes said at least, that we should have something like an action step in focusing. And sometimes the focusing itself brings you to a new state of being, which is the action step. You're then already different in the world. But sometimes to have a kind of an action in the world that you could do with other people who similarly want to be aware of themselves while they're being in the world, that kind of shared action really appeals to me.
Yeah, really, it is a beautiful idea. And the combination of focusing and getting to your heart. Yeah, and to share that with others. So it's such an important tool that Gene has brought to the world.
Can I ask, is it your experience that this can be a way for focusing to become better known in the world?
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah.
So I'm just wondering if there's anything else. I mean, this has taken a little bit more of a kind of a social aspect than I was thinking, which I've really enjoyed. But I'm wondering if there's anything else that you're feeling passionate about or would like to mention before we wrap it up.
Well, let me see if, because I have all these letters with Gene.
Yeah.
Oh, I could tell you that this is hilarious. So I sent him, this is in 2011, and I sent him an article. It was called Joint Attention and World Constitution. The idea being that our attention together is actually how language develops, first of all. That's very well known. Joint attention, as a child, I pay attention to an object, and the caregiver says, well, that's a cup, and that's how you learn language. So he read it, and here's his feedback. It's a 43-page document. He says, Larry, your conclusion on page 43 has new and significant points. New, at least so far as I've seen. I'll try to say how I understand them. I read pages 1 to 42, but it got very little out of them. The conclusion page surprised me. Then he writes me a 6-page paper on the conclusion.
Wow.
Line by line. And one of the statements he said, and he says, and one of the things I say in there, any such processes to affect me must pass through attention to be effective. And that's sort of like this idea we've been talking about, that as I'm bombarded by the things that want to take my attention, if I'm holding, if I'm staying with myself, it can't affect me. So that's what I argue. He said, any such processes must pass through attention to be effective. He says, this seems quite false to me. What you're getting at has to be thought of differently. And then he goes through and explains.
Did you, looking over those things again now recently, was there anything that really kind of sort of stood out to you as something you had forgotten or something that seemed especially relevant now?
Well, the first thing I told you was his idea that attention was going to be so important. And now the attention economy, it was really that was in 1991. I don't know if we had the internet then.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't remember, maybe brewing or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's remarkable
Mm-hmm.
that he thought attention was going to be that important.
That's
And
remarkable.
here he's talking about the foreground, background, and the way to think about it. And the way I'm thinking about foreground and background, in the background, you have things that are habitual, that need less attention, and then automatic, which need no attention. But these things can change as a direction of attention shifts. But he says, oh, this way, and people think about the background as automatic or whatever. That's wrong. Because look, you can place attention in the background and then look what happens. In other words, you can do focusing.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing can keep moving forward, being carried forward as you stay with it. I said, oh my God, because I'm trying to get them to believe the idea of attention being placed in the body and in the world as a real thing versus just something going on in your brain. That's what I'm up against. But that would be a wonderful thing to talk about, is that when the Gene's ideas, which are really spelled out in detail. So that really struck me.
It's interesting. If I understand that, it's pointing to the fact that if you bring your attention to something, it then is in the foreground. It begins to stand out and come alive in response to your attention.
Right.
And that could be anything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. It's with people. Mm-hmm. I mean, you pay to someone and they feel it, they feel hurt, and that's because it's placed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's not just something going on in your brain.
Yeah.
They can feel that space opening up between you.
Yes, exactly.
And they blossom.
Mm-hmm.
They can feel hurt. I mean, this is the thing. So many people don't feel hurt.
Yeah.
And so it can be world changing.
Yes.
Just that fact.
Yeah.
Right. So that's another thing for focus.
Exactly. That's what I was just going to say, is you can immediately feel the difference of someone who's just listening to your words and not really present versus someone who's actually bodily present.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Unless they're so lost in their heads. That's the problem. If somebody's really lost in their head, they're not going to be in touch with it. They have to have some, so I think something inside, I think something Gene would say, yeah, they're picking it up. There's a crossing taking place and it's something implicitly is going on, but they're so lost in their head that they're not really aware. They say, oh, I talked to them a little about that guy, but they're not really as in touch as they need to be. So it does need to be a two-way effort to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, a real pleasure to talk to you and listen to you.
Really delightful. Really great to get to know you too.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. And we'll make sure to have some of the links so that people can find some of the groups and some of the writing you've been talking about.
Okay.
Sounds important.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. I really appreciate that.
Okay. Terrific. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thanks a lot, Greg.
Yep. See you later.
Bye-bye.